We assume that it's because our music's not good enough, or we're not good enough. But the reality is, that's not the whole truth. It's not quite that simple. Hey guys, Dilby here. Welcome back to the channel. So one of the scariest things that we have to deal with as artists is putting ourselves out there and sending demos to labels. It can make us feel vulnerable as we're putting our art out there for someone else to judge, and this can be nerve-wracking and demotivating if it doesn't work out the way that we want. This fear of rejection can easily hold you back if you let it. For some people, it can be absolutely crippling for their career. That's why it's so important that we find ways to overcome this. But the truth is, it's a necessary evil in order to progress in the industry. The thing is, a lot of this is actually in our heads. So what I want to share with you today is some of the realities of what's actually going on when you're sending out demos. Some factors you may not have considered, and some things that are totally out of your control. As humans, we tend to be very egocentric, and it's in our nature to make things all about us. So when we send out a demo and they say no, or they don't respond, or they don't even listen, we assume that it's because our music's not good enough, or we're not good enough. But the reality is, that's not the whole truth. It's not quite that simple. The first scenario to look at is when we're writing to the label's demos at email address. You probably got it off their socials or the website or something. It's easy to find, it's pretty much public information. The important thing to consider here is just how many emails they're receiving. In most cases it's hundreds. For bigger labels, it's thousands. In reality, most labels are pretty small operations, and the responsibility for checking these demos lands on the label owner or the label manager. They're probably an artist who needs to find time in the studio. They're running the label and managing everything that goes along with that. They may well be a touring DJ, and of course they've got friends, family and other commitments in life. In the case of small or medium-sized labels, they may well even have a full-time job outside of music. It's really important to keep this in mind when sending demos to these generic email addresses. Just because they didn't sign your track, it doesn't mean it's bad. And just because they didn't listen to your demos, it doesn't mean you're blacklisted. Perseverance and consistency is key here. You can stand out by sending music regularly and by following up on the demos that you do send. But be sure to wait a few weeks and always be courteous and polite, no matter how long you've been waiting. Something that most artists fail to realize is that most labels actually have a really limited release schedule. For bigger labels, they might release 1 or 2 EPs per month. This works out to about 15 or 20 per year. And that's probably on the high side. For small and medium-sized labels, it's probably closer to 8 to 12 releases per year. The next factor to consider is the core artists of the label. In most cases, the label is run by 1 or more producers, and they're probably going to have a couple of releases on the label per year. Next up is a group of core artists who work regularly with the label, and they're going to have probably 1 release per year. So after accounting for the core label crew, we can see that probably half or 2/3 of the release schedule is taken up already. In most cases, the true capacity for the label to release new artists is actually really limited. Something else to consider is that the owners and the label crew may well have friends and associates who would like to release on the label as well. It's only natural that these people are going to be given preference on the release schedule. Think about it from their perspective. If it were your label, are you going to sign your good homie you've known for 10 years or some kid that just DM'd you on Instagram with their latest tech house bomb? So now we have a better understanding of how limited a label's capacity for unsolicited demos really is. This ties back to my last point about the difficulties of sending demos to the demos at email address. Don't get me wrong, it can work. I've had success with it myself in the past, but a much better way to go about it is through networking. Make friends with people, engage with people on social media, and be part of your local scene. And work on developing relationships that are going to help you achieve your music goals. But keep in mind, this is the long game. It won't happen overnight, so send the demo emails too. You don't want to miss out on any opportunities. Another trap that people fall into is following a label's sound too closely. Most labels have a sound that they're known for, and some have even pioneered a scene around that sound. Labels like Dirty Bird and All Day a Dream come to mind here. If you think about it, most big labels have a pretty distinctive sound, but this sound evolves over time, and that's kind of where people trip up. Let's look at Hot Creations as an example. Whether you like their music or not, they're generally setting trends, not following them. In the case of Hot Creations, this comes from Jamie Jones consistently pushing his sound and evolving his tastes, and we can hear this in the label over time. The trap producers can fall into here is trying to emulate the latest big track on Hot Creations and then assuming that Jamie's going to sign it. But there's a couple of things we need to consider. Firstly, Hot Creations already signed Along Came Polly, so why do they need another track that sounds like it, or another producer that sounds like Rebuke? The second thing, which a lot of people don't consider, is that the tracks that are being released now were often signed a year ago. As a result of this delay, Jamie's looking for something new and fresh, and his taste has probably moved on. The best thing you can do as a producer is just be true to yourself. Make the sounds you love. Don't follow the latest trend or try to copycat a label's biggest tune. Be realistic and target labels in the right ballpark, but don't be scared if your track isn't a cookie-cutter version of their latest big release. Trust me, they'd much rather hear something fresh. With all this in mind, it is still possible that you went about sending your demos in the wrong way. But what the hell is the right way to send a demo? Luckily for you, I've got a video on that right here. So watch it now. Anyway, that's it from me today. I'll catch you next time. Peace!